All right, and welcome to Betting from Home. This is Dave Jones. I'm your host of this show, Betting from Home. We're going to do NFL Week 12. And boy, this week is going to be a good week. It's Thanksgiving weekend. Hopefully you're staying safe with your coronavirus and all that stuff. Hopefully not spreading the virus. But, this show is not really about virus or anything like that. So we're going to get into Week 12. First off, we got Betting from Home. We got Twitter betting _home 87. That's Twitter. You can do myhomebet.com. And, of course, you can find me on any of your favorite podcast download sites. I also got YouTube. I kind of do more of like a raw, it's kind of a raw edit. And then the podcast tends to be, hopefully, is a more polished, little better thing that's kind of put together. Yeah, I worked hard on just trying to make my podcast better and better each week. Hopefully, I get some listeners and some people to stick around and be kind of real fans. Putting things together. I've decided that I'm going to try and do kind of like 3 different categories. I don't want to say love it, like it, hate it, but more like the best bet, middle bet, and worst bet. The best bet might not be like the most exciting game. It's going to be more like the game that I feel most strongly about. It's not going to be the games that I kind of go, the wishy-washy games. So my best bets, this week I got four best bets. But one thing I want to talk about with Week 12 is one of the reasons why I like Week 12, and starting from here to about Week 14, 15, you could kind of really take who's a good team and who's a bad team. Who's running with momentum? Whose momentum has switched? And with the extra spot being in the playoffs and only one team getting a bye, I think we're going to have competitive football through Week 16. Usually, I would say Week 15 and 16 are kind of dump-off weeks for certain teams. I mean, you're going to have some teams that are just typically kind of really bad, and you get a feel for them, and they're still not good. You got the Jets this year just coming in terrible. You can pretty much always just bet against the Jets, and you're going to be happy with it. But really, the question is, how much are the Jets going to lose by? And that's kind of the unfortunate thing when it comes to the NFL this year with the Jets. How much are they going to lose by? It sounds kind of sad, but that's just the way it is. Anyways, going into my top best bet, my first, I don't want to say top best bet, but my first best bet is going to be the Arizona and New England game. We have a over-under of 50. We have Arizona only getting a 2.5 point favorite in this game, which I actually kind of found to be interesting with the 2.5 point favorite. I think immediately I picked Arizona to win this game, and I'm kind of surprised that it's not a bigger spread. I would have put it at a 7-point spread or an 8-point spread. But let's dive a little bit deeper into the stats and some of the points, and kind of look into why I kind of put a better bet at Arizona minus the 2.5. Honestly, I would go if the line changes, I would go as high as a minus like 5 or 6. I can't really say they're going to win by 7. But I think if you went 6, and it does get that close. My personal line would be the -6.5. I'm going to put it at -2.5 though. So let's kind of zoom in on some of the stats here. I start off by seeing that New England on average scores 20 points and lets out 23 points a game. And the last 5, there are three losses. They've won 2 of the last 5 games. Scoring 20, 23, 30, 21, and 6. So in my mind, New England is kind of scoring kind of low, and it's kind of reflecting that 20-point average as of late. In Arizona, I feel like Arizona is trending upwards. They did lose last week to Seattle, and it was one of the bets I felt like last week. I do remember picking Arizona to win as a underdog. But Seattle's a good team. New England is on the bad team side. Okay, Arizona, I believe, is on the good team side at 6-4. They're really starting to come into their own. They beat Buffalo, which is leaning towards them being a good team this year. They did lose to Miami, but Miami is kind of like on a weird upswing. So I kind of put that down as an interesting loss. They lost to Miami, though, 34-31. The week before that, they beat Seattle in overtime, and they handled Dallas 30-10. It seems like that they're beating bad teams. They beat San Francisco, they beat Washington, Detroit, Dallas, the Jets. They're beating bad teams by a wide margin. It's close versus good teams or better teams. And I kind of am putting the New England Patriots as a leaning towards bad team. And it's kind of hard to say that after 20 years of being a great team. But hey, they lost Tom Brady. What can you say? Their defense is holding teams. New England's defense is holding teams to 23 points. That's still good, but they just can't seem to score. I have, in my mind, Arizona scoring right around 26, 27 points. I think they're gonna show up and kind of try and prove themselves. New England, I think, is going to get somewhere around 17, 20 points. If you did 28 to 20, that'd be 48. The over-under for that game was 50. I'm going to go with the under. The under for that game is barely. I don't really like picking either the over or the under. I would do kind of a stay away on the total for the game, but I would take Arizona minus the 2.5. I originally wrote under, so I'm gonna stick with that under. It's really, will New England score like 24 points? If they hit 24 points, it will push it to the over. I think that Arizona, though, is going to really make a statement game and kind of make New England look bad. I'm going to quickly look up. Does Arizona stop the run? That's kind of the question. I believe if you can stop Cam Newton, you're going to stop New England in their tracks. Rushing yards allowed per game. Sorry. Rushing yards allowed per game, 261. So New England might, and maybe that's where some of the bookkeepers in Vegas are gonna kind of think that maybe New England, Cam Newton might run all over them. However, I think if you go into this game, you know that you have to stop Cam Newton. Like, that's my game plan. If that's my game plan, then Arizona should make that their game plan. And so I think Arizona is gonna come out on top by at least the 2.5 points. If it was, that's a field goal. Can they win by a field goal? I think so. Moving on, Cleveland, Jacksonville. Cleveland is another team that handles the bad teams. Do I consider Cleveland to be a good team? They're trending upwards. Do I consider Jacksonville to be a bad team? Absolutely. So that's why I'm taking Cleveland to win this game. Jacksonville, it is a 7-point spread. Do I feel comfortable with taking Jacksonville plus the points? Not really, but they do tend to keep games close. In the last 5, they lost to Pittsburgh 27-3, so that one doesn't really count. But that was versus a solid team, and we'll get into Pittsburgh a little bit later on. Let's see, Green Bay, they scored 20. Versus Houston, they scored 25. Versus the Chargers, they scored 29. Jacksonville has the ability to score a lot of points. I kind of like them plus 7 versus the Browns because the Browns recently have been kind of a bad team. They beat Philly, they beat Houston, they beat Cincy. The Browns will beat the bad teams. And they're actually holding bad teams to. They held Philly to 17, Houston to 7, and while Cincy did score 34 points on them. They held Indy to 23 points. Dallas always scores a lot of points. They held Washington. They held Dallas to 38 points. Washington to 20. Cincy to 30. So Cincy and Dallas are like the two teams that have scored a lot on them. There's always a couple of teams that each team has a team that they have trouble doing what they usually do against. Other than that, they've lost to better teams. Better teams: Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore. So I'm putting the Browns. The Browns they're a team that they beat the bad teams. Are they going to beat a good team? No. So this year they're better than they have been in the past, but still a bad team. As for my bet for that game, I'm leaning towards the over. I do think that Jacksonville is going to score a lot of points. I think this is going to be. Vegas has this game as an over under 49. I actually see this game going into the 50s, 54. It's going to be like 30-24. I'm actually thinking it's going to be a high scoring game, kind of a shootout. In Jacksonville, I think keeps it within 7. I feel comfortable about those two types of game, or those two types of bets. I'm taking the over 49 and Jacksonville plus 7. Moving on down to Seattle versus Philly. This is not going to be a fun game. I won't even watch it. They have the Seattle favored by 5.5. Philadelphia has fallen apart this year. Carson Wentz has fallen apart. Their defense has fallen apart. Philadelphia is really on a downtrend. And Seattle, even though they don't have the best defense, Seattle is trending upwards, and they kind of been sticking at the top and beating the teams they should beat. Russell Wilson is doing awesome. With only a 5.5 point spread, I think I like Seattle plus 5.5. I don't really have much more to go over this game. I do put in my better bets. I like Seattle minus 5.5. As far as the over-under, see if I can pull that up for you. The over-under is at 50. I almost see Seattle stomping them. They're going to get 30. Will Philadelphia score 20? That's the question, and I think that's kind of what Las Vegas or the bookkeepers are looking at. I lean towards the over, but boy, watch it go under because Philadelphia, they might only put up like 14 points this game, and I kind of feel like they're just gonna have a bomb of a game. They're kind of predicting a 27-23. I don't really think Philadelphia even gets that 23. I'm gonna go 30-14 at a 44. Moving on down, San Francisco versus Los Angeles Rams. I should say Los Angeles Rams versus San Francisco because San Francisco is at home. This is another game. It's not, in my mind, a very exciting game to watch, but San Francisco is injured. Jimmy Garoppolo is out once again, and every time Jimmy Garoppolo gets injured, San Francisco loses. Los Angeles Rams, I watched them play last week versus Tampa Bay. Jared Goff is slowly winning me over. He puts the ball in the playmaker's hands. I am actually leaning towards him being a good quarterback. Previously, I probably would have told you I didn't like Jared Goff, but watching him versus Tampa Bay last week, I've kind of swung around to liking him. San Francisco is on a 3-game losing streak versus New Orleans, Green Bay, and Seattle, and I think Los Angeles Rams, their defense is going to show up and stop them again. Without Jimmy Garoppolo, the San Francisco 49ers just don't know how to score points. 17 versus Green Bay and 13 versus New Orleans. Los Angeles Rams are keeping consistently over 20 points a game. It looks like right around 24 is what they average. Last 5, they scored 27, 23, 17, 24, and 16. I think the Rams, though, are trending upwards and will beat San Francisco. I'm going to take minus the 6.5 point spread. And once again, the over-under is kind of a hard one. They have it at 45.5, which is really low. And I think we're kind of betting in San Francisco getting like 14. Watch this be like a 27-14 game. That'd put you at 41. So you're kind of counting on San Francisco to come up with some points here. I would lean towards the under, even under 45 points. Let's see. That kind of does it for my best bet. I only had 4 best bets. My next few here are going to be middle bets. They're games that I feel like I kind of know who's going to win, but maybe I'm not sure which way to bet on it. And I might not spend as much time on each of them. My best bets, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on. So we have, for my middle bet, Las Vegas and Atlanta. You have 2 teams here that are kind of middle of the road teams. And when you have 2 middle of the road teams, it's kind of hard to make a real strong prediction. The Raiders have looked good against Kansas City, but that's kind of like their thing. For some reason, they can beat up on Kansas City, and they came close to beating them last week. If Patrick Mahomes doesn't throw a touchdown in the last 19 seconds, we're actually talking an entirely different game. They definitely beat Las Vegas. Las Vegas is one of those teams, kind of like the Browns, where they beat the bad teams. They beat Denver. They beat the Chargers. They beat the Browns. And they're going to lose against the good teams, which kind of brings you to Atlanta. Is Atlanta a good team? I'm leaning towards yes, minus their defense, but maybe they kind of fix their defense a little bit.